Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Melissa Huang and today we're going to cover a few different topics, okay? First I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself so that you feel more comfortable asking me for help. We're going to talk about this beautiful library homepage and everything that entails, as well as some education-specific databases and how to organize your research. So, without further ado, I'm Melissa. Hello. Um, my background is heavily in the classics. I started taking Latin in high school and kept it up through my bachelor's degree and my first master's degree. But it was during that first master's degree that I sort of realized that I didn't want to go get my PhD in classics and become a professor as I had sort of envisioned for myself. I found that the one thing that I don't enjoy about teaching is that it sort of hinges on the majority of the class, right? So what way can I organize my information and teach it in a way that gets to the most number of students and that can be understood in 16 weeks? Right. But there were always sort of these outliers that I just never felt happy about leaving behind or having to work with for, extra hours outside of class time because I knew that was cutting into their own work time as well as for other classes and that kind of thing. I struggled with that for a couple of years. But then I started talking to someone about librarianship, and I realized that I could help students at their own pace, still teaching some classes, on how to do research, for example, but also, most of my day is occupied with people sending me personal requests about whatever they want to learn next. It's not limited to just my one class. It can be about anything that a person is interested in, that they want help researching or finding a little more information about, or, resolving an argument with one of their roommates or something. So, there's no time crunch and there's no concern about letter grades. And I just really enjoy that aspect of my job. So hopefully, this encourages you and tells you a little bit about why you should feel comfortable asking me whatever you want, whenever. I don't mind in the middle of the night panicked questions about where to find research or how to get to this article. I've been there, done that. So, yeah. All right. So, we're going to jump into the library website. The first thing that you should know, other than how to get to it, which is library.western.edu, there are links from my Western as well that you can access this, but I would just bookmark this page just so you can get to it easily. But the first thing I want you to know is how to email me, right? So if you go over this About button and hit Contact Us, you have all of our wonderful faces and names and emails and phones, all kinds of information right here. Here is my email. But basically, I am the primary contact, especially for students of all levels, graduate and undergraduate, on research. And that's owing to a few different factors, but primarily because I have so much education, and my specialty is research in any field that you can imagine, including, in this case, education. So, that's the first thing. The second thing, if we click back onto our homepage here, we've got tons and tons of little drop-down lists here. Depending on where you're going to be coming from, if you're all online, we have some advice on graduate and online students and how to, do certain things and, access. So if you have trouble logging into things, you can try here first or just email me, right? We have spaces, but of course, depending on where you're coming from and how long you'll be here, this may or may not be relevant to you, right? We've also sort of branched into online education, and we've got some good tips for you on using Canvas if it's your first time going through that, as well as Zoom and that kind of thing. So, that's a quick about on this page here. One of the most important things about our search tool right here, Western One Search, is that it defaults to the All tab, but all doesn't mean all, right? It doesn't mean everything. unfortunately. It basically searches through the top biggest 100 databases, and so for a general search, it does all right. Same for the article search. They'll go and find sort of general things for you. Books and media will help you as well. It has almost a different view, basically, of information. So if you wanted to start your research and you were looking through all, for example, you might look for, let's say, active learning. And then you'd wait for the page to load patiently, very patiently. And we'll find 300,000 results, right? So this is a lot, especially at the graduate level when you start doing research. It's almost best to go straight for specific databases or journals even, specific journal titles. And that's just because, at the undergrad level, you're usually doing surface area research. You're just sort of learning about what people are talking about, right? But as a graduate student, you're going to find that a good search result list might be 100 or 200 results total. And they'll be very niche, right? So each one of those articles is going to matter to you, right? Or has the potential, at least. So you'll notice this format is going to be pretty common amongst our databases, and that's because it's EBSCOhost owned, essentially. And the deal with that is that all of these are going to be very similar. You're going to have a format on the left side that helps you limit your search. So, if you don't have time to look through 300,000 results, you can cut it down to things that are in our catalog. You can change this publication date to only, let's say, from 94 to 2021. We're in the interesting part of the year where you can publish in the future because there are articles that are coming out but not yet out yet. So it didn't really do much at all because, there's been so much published in the last couple of years. So let's do that again, but only from 2017. That should take us down quite a bit. And sometimes you might need to click on it again for it to update. Yeah, 60,000, much better. But one of the biggest issues with EBSCOhost is that this link up here and all of the links, as a matter of fact, up in this URL box will go away. So these are temporary results. If you wanted to save your results, so let's say, we've clicked through, we want only academic journals, and we scroll down a little more to subject, let's say higher education. You can show more to have more subject terms. But let's say we're really looking forward to pouring through this data, but we know that this search is going to time out, essentially. It's going to all disappear. If you don't want to erase all this work that you did and limiting it and try to remember next time the keywords that you used and the date that you used, all you have to do is go to this button right here that says share, and you can create a permanent link to this search. So once you copy and paste this, you can come back to this page exactly the way it is, and then maybe, when you have time, because we're going to scroll down a little here, when you have time, you can go and, go continue from page 4 or wherever you left off, right? So if you wanted to save a single article, we would click through on one of these records, we call them, and you'll see buttons on this right-hand side to help you save it, essentially. If you were to just copy and paste this link up top, it would disappear and you would have no idea where it belonged to. So the best thing to do is to either do this permalink, so when you click it, it'll create a persistent link to this page. And if you have time, you can sit here and also write down the authors and the title and the journal and the date, all of that good stuff. Or you can do a little shortcut and click Cite right here. And this should include, the authors, the title, journal, all of that, as well as a link. However, this isn't always going to be good enough to use as a, actual citation in your final paper. And that's because it's only as good as the people who input it were, right? So if, these characters will sometimes be distorted, you'll sometimes get incorrect, formatting in some of these citations. The capitals particularly, they aren't the best. So if you're switching between APA and MLA, the capitalization of your journal article is going to be very different, right? So just keep that in mind. It's good for a quick and dirty, just grab everything you can, because if you do just click the permalink, sometimes that link might get broken, or you might be working collaboratively in a document and somebody else messes it up or something. And if you don't have any idea what the original article was, you can't go back and find it, right? So it's important to retain this information, especially about authors and the title of it, at the very least, right? All right, so those are some quirks basically about the homepage search. If you were to do the same search in books and media, active learning, you'll see a very different results list. And this is basically owing to different programs and systems that different searches are on. So if you click into the catalog, you'll find books as well as ebooks, which may be good for starting your research. Journals and articles on the right side over here, as well as resources from other libraries, which may or may not be as relevant in these times where our library is physically closed still. We've also got archival materials here that may turn up, and a digital public library. So, it's always good to try a few different searches, and also to sort of note the kinds of words that, people are using in these articles that you're finding. So if you find something that's really interesting to you, it's always good to try and see. Let's click through here. Look at and see what words that they use either in their abstract, or sometimes they'll provide some keywords and that kind of thing to help you along. Okay? All right. So that's a little bit about the homepage. I'm going to take you next to specific databases for education. And to do that, you can go through it through several ways. You can do collections, database lists. You can click to this databases tab. Let's try that. And then from here, you can search for a specific database. A lot of people think that you can just type any word into here, and it doesn't really work that way, right? The database finder finds the database that is helpful to you. There's also an A to Z list of databases, but the best thing to do is click on the actual link here, Database Finder. And this is because it brings you to the full list, and you can sort by subject instead of A to Z, right? If you don't know the name of your specific database yet. If you go down to education and our subject list, it's going to sort out all of the ones that are best for education. This gray box shows you the best bets, and if you scroll down a little, there'll be even more. So one of the key things to do is basically look at trade journals, right? So the Chronicle of Higher Education is really good for higher education, right? It talks a lot about the most current happening things for education. And if you click through this link, you'll notice, if you're quick, that up in the URL box it had an e-proxy really quickly. So you'll see here premium access is provided by Western. All good. If you just go straight to thechronicle.com from home, from off campus, it won't automatically know to associate you with Western, and so it'll bother you for a subscription and try to get you to pay them and all of that. So if you click through the library site though, and if you're off campus, you might see something that looks like this, and that'll have you log in. Basically, you just use your STU number and then your usual Western password to get in. So that goes for almost all of these databases. If you're coming from off campus, you may need to log in. So, all right. One of the biggest education resources is ERIC. So this is the Education Resource Information Center. It's provided by the government, so, grains of salt and all of that. It's a very good, excellent database. But in this case, we're linking through it from EBSCOhost, but you can just go through it on your own. So if you went through ERIC ed.gov, you would see a totally different view, right? So basically, EBSCOhost is almost like a subscription platform. They pick and choose different databases and then put them all together to see, to sell that access to libraries and schools and that kind of thing. The reason why they would do this for ERIC is, to help differentiate between, let's say, search results, for example. So having the same method to search through the database, for example, like limiting by year and that kind of thing, is sometimes helpful for people. There's also a way to combine a lot of different databases together in EBSCOhost, which I'll show you in a minute. But ERIC is one of the big hitters, right? And this is open source, so anything that you see through the library website through here, you'll be able to see off campus as well. You don't have to link through the library at all. It's the same thing. So the two main tabs here are the collection and the thesaurus. So if you click through the thesaurus, you can find different key terms to use. So let's say you're looking at active learning. And oh, look, there's the results. So basically, the thesaurus isn't necessarily here to help you find replacement terms, but it's to sort of help you decide what terms you should use. So in addition to broader terms and narrower terms, there are also going to be terms that they would prefer you to use instead of other terms, right? It would be insane if everyone just used whatever word they thought was best in the moment for their research, right? But if everyone uses the same word to mean the same things, we can agree on them, and then it's much easier to do your research, right? So it has use this term instead of these, and some related terms, such as experiential learning, like that. There's more related terms all the way down here, and as well as narrower and replacements for different terms. So you can see there's some history here sometimes included, activity learning from 68 to 78. So if you were looking for historical research, that might be the word that you want to use, right? So let's take this over to our collection and let's try experiential learning. And so you can see it's a little bit different. We've got, publication date, but you can't really put in your own descriptor right here. It's got different sources, authors, publication types, as well as descriptors, right? So it's a little different from our EBSCOhost view. It's also different in that when you click on something like this, learning about academic integrity through experiential learning, you can link directly to this. There's, usually if it doesn't say permalink anywhere, and it's not an EBSCOhost database, you can just take this link up here and rely on it to stay stable and come back to the same page. But, each thing will be different, essentially. So before you just copy and paste tons and tons of links everywhere and get overexcited about research, take the time to copy and paste also the title and the authors, and a little bit about it so you can come back to it and try to find it if you lose that link. So, all right, so that's ERIC. ERIC is great. We love ERIC. But if you were to search, let's say, Sport Discuss, this is another EBSCOhost-owned database. But let's try experiential learning and see how many results we get. Okay, about 1,009. The thing about databases is that people get kind of spoiled by Google. So when Google searches for you, they would be looking for experiences, experientials, all kinds of things, learning, learners, learner. But these academic databases don't do that. They just don't have the money. They haven't quite gotten there yet, right? So if we were to do experiential learner versus learning, remember this is 1,000, now we got 28. Oh. And you can see here it includes learners. But if we wanted to include learn, learner, learning, all of those, what we can do is do learn and then an asterisk. So what the asterisk does is tell it, hey, we're going to want every word that starts with learn, and then you can fill in the blank with whatever you got after the asterisk, right? So when we do that, we're going to see about 1024, meaning all the 1009 plus the 28 that we just got, all of those together, right? The same thing could be done for experience, Experian, and then asterisk. And that's going to broaden it out to 8,000. So you may want to do this if you aren't getting enough results, just to help it along, basically, to pick out more results, right? So the other thing you can do is choose databases. So if we click choose databases, you can see here that you can do ERIC. We'll uncheck Sport Discuss, and let's say we also want to do Education Research Complete. So these two, and it saved our search. That's very nice of them. And if we do our search again, we're going to get 229,000, right? So basically, this is pretty useful in collecting a lot of information from different databases. That's one of the reasons why everyone has EBSCOhost, is that you can sort of combine or separate out different databases to get the kinds of results that you want, right? So the reason why databases are the way to go for academic research are that, there's millions of pieces of information out there, right? If you were to Google experiential learning, you'd get probably billions of results, right? And it can be very cumbersome to look through all of those. So when you select different databases, you're sort of picking and choosing the kinds of things to search through. So maybe you're only looking through 500,000 articles. And that can be really good because maybe you don't need to search for experiential learning in metaphysics, right? Maybe you just want K through 12. If you want K through 12, then it's probably better to focus on education databases, right? So that's a little bit about our fun little databases here. The other thing, too, I forgot to mention, comparing with Google, is that Google prioritizes very differently, right? Essentially, every result that you see on an EBSCOhost page is equal. They try to do relevance, but it's really not that great because it's a little bit dumber, right? It doesn't think as hard about it. But Google also, the first thing you might see is probably an ad, sponsored content, then Wikipedia, then maybe some, general information articles about your topic, and then further down the list, right? So basically, when people search on Google, they're seeing what Google wants them to see. They're clicking on the very first or second link. Research has been shown that, very few people even go past the first page of Google results, right? And so you can't rely on your search engine in academic research to help you, decide what's the most relevant, what's the most important piece of information, right? You have to go searching through yourself, and maybe, the information that you find on the 5th page will be just as good or even better as what's on the first page, right? So you have to sort of analyze where you get assumptions from and stop them when you're doing academic research, right? So the last thing I want to talk about is organizing your research. There are many, many ways to do it, but the one that we go through here at Western at our library is Zotero. It's free, it's open source software. It's installed already on every campus computer if you have access to them. If you don't, it's freeware you can download, or if you're using a Chromebook, you can use the web version, right? So it syncs across all these platforms. It'll help you not only save your citations, but also help you cite them in a paper. So for example, I'm going to open Word here and click Zotero. We're going to say sky is blue. Add a citation right here. Choose APA, that's fine. Let's see. I'm going to add some citations here, hit enter, and then it'll cite everything for me. So Zotero not only helps you sort of save things, cite things, it can also create your own citations. You can add a bibliography here, and it can also change these citations. So you could change just from APA to MLA to Journal of Ecology, Science, Nature, whatever. So if you want to learn how to do this, I would recommend setting up an appointment with me just by emailing me, because every computer is going to be different, so it always requires a little bit of fiddling around. So I like to do that kind of one-on-one to help you set it up, start citing things and saving things, and get it all there for you. So I hope this was helpful. Please, please, please email me. Please. Please, that's all I'm here for, is to help people and to help you with your research. So I really hope that this video wasn't too long for you, and that you've learned something, a thing or two. So I hope to be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.